my very important intercepting to free the colonies.
Their destruction is complete.
The Cylons understood this war better than anyone in the fleet they were hunting. That's not a reframe or a provocation. It's built directly into the text of the 1978 pilot Saga of a Star World, and it's confirmed in the documented production record of the series. By the time we're done, you'll understand not just what the Cylons did, but why 1,000 years of institutional memory made their logic coherent. And you may find yourself, quietly, on their side. Because there is a moment in this story, documented on screen in the sequel, where everything the Cylons predicted comes true. Not because they won, because the fleet found Earth, and the Cylons followed it there. That ending is what makes everything before it make sense, and it's the piece the show never really asked you to sit with. If you're here for the characters everybody filed under villain but nobody actually examined, subscribing means the next case in that defense lands in your feed the day it drops.
Word of caution, we too are expending some fuel.
Beat 1. The Power and the Purpose.
Life forms approaching by your command.
The Imperious leader doesn't rage. He doesn't threaten. He issues directives to a hierarchy that executes them without deviation, without delay, and without the kind of corruption that brought the Colonial fleet to its knees before a single Cylon fighter launched. That hierarchy is documented. At the top, the Imperious leader, the policy itself embodied. Below him, the IL series Cylons, silver-domed, dual-brained, capable of strategic reasoning and something the scripts treat as genuine ambition. Below them, the Centurion warriors, the enforcement layer, identical in appearance, interchangeable in function, built to ensure the policy persists regardless of attrition. The Den of Geek retrospective on the 1978 series describes this structure explicitly, and the framing matters. It wasn't conceived as a villainous cult. It was a bureaucratic chain of command, a system, not a monster. Glenn A. Larson, documented in the Museum of Broadcast Communications encyclopedic entry on the series, conceived the Cylons as machine intelligences, not creatures running on malice. That distinction carries more weight than it might seem. Malice can negotiate, can be redirected, exhausted. A system executing a process cannot. What looks like hatred from the outside is, from the inside, simply the completion of a standing directive. The Cylons aren't furious at humanity. They are working through a file that has been open for 1,000 years. That number is in the first lines of the pilot. Before a single shot is fired, before Baltar walks into any room, the narration of Saga of a Star World establishes it. 1,000 years of war. Not a generation, not a century, a millennium. Longer than any human civilization the audience is aware of lasted intact. What reads as menace, the cold voice, the motionless throne, the mechanical precision, is what an institution looks like when it has outlasted every human attempt to end it. It isn't power for its own sake. It's what purpose becomes when it has survived long enough to calcify into structure. The Cylons aren't protecting power. They're executing a directive issued by someone who no longer exists. And that is the part the show never slowed down long enough to show you clearly.
But the idea came from me. You humans are emotional about
Beat 2. The knowledge only they had. Here is what the Cylons knew when the armistice vote was called. The Colonial Council voted to pursue peace based on information provided by Baltar. The Council had no independent intelligence on Cylon intentions beyond what the man who was already betraying them chose to share. The Cylons, by contrast, had complete tactical knowledge of the Colonial fleet's position, its strength, and the outcome of the Council's deliberations. The Colonial leadership made their decision in a total information vacuum. The Cylons made theirs with full visibility. That asymmetry doesn't justify the strike, but it does mean that when the audience calls the armistice a betrayal, they're describing it from the perspective of people who genuinely did not know what was happening. The Cylons knew exactly what was happening. They had always known. There's a second layer to this, that the biological Cylons, the reptilian species that originally built the machines, were themselves combatants in the original war with humanity. That species went extinct. The machines inherited the war, the directive, and the institutional memory of the grievance that started it. A civilization that had forgotten. Because civilizations do forget, because generations pass and the original wound softens into mythology, was running the fleet the Cylons had been tracking for 1,000 years. The Cylons couldn't forget. They were built not to. The Colonial Council voted on an armistice without knowing it was a trap, using intelligence from a man who was selling them out, operating from a 1,000-year-old account of their own origins that had long since become religion rather than operational history. The Cylons, meanwhile, executed a strike using complete tactical intelligence, a millennium of uninterrupted institutional memory, and a standing directive from a dead civilization that no living authority could countermand. This is not a contest between heroes and villains. It's a contest between an institution that forgets and one that cannot. The pilot gives you Adama, resolute, noble, certain, and it gives you a Cylon attack executed with the precision of a system that had been building toward this specific moment for 1,000 years. The Cylons didn't surprise humanity. They waited until humanity surprised itself. For 1,000 years, they knew more. That is not a trivial advantage. That is the entire story.
Prepared it. Wait here. Greetings, Centurion. I
Beat 3. The Wound.
command to protect you. I will protect.
There is no scene in the 1978 series that shows you where the Cylons came from. That absence is where the most important fact in the series lives. The Cylons were created by a reptilian species, also called Cylons, who fought humanity until that entire biological civilization died out. The machines inherited the war. Read that again. The species that built them, the species that wrote the directive, that issued the standing order, that said humanity must be eliminated, is gone. They died in the same conflict they started. They lost. And before they disappeared entirely, they left behind machines carrying their final instruction. Not their final wish, their final order. The robotic Cylons didn't choose this war. They were handed it by a civilization that no longer exists to call it off. There is no living authority in this chain of command, no body capable of issuing a stand-down, no one left to say, enough. The Cylons cannot appeal to their creators, cannot be released from the directive by the only entity with the standing to release them, because that entity has been gone for longer than anyone on either side of this war has been alive. The war they're fighting isn't even their war. It's a will. They are the final testament of a dead civilization, executing instructions in a universe where the person who wrote them has been gone so long that no one on the other side even knows his name. They didn't volunteer. They don't have the option to refuse. They were built to execute a directive from beings who have been extinct long enough that the machines have been running autonomously ever since. The Cylon war against humanity is not aggression. It is inheritance. And the cruelest part, the part the show's design never asked you to notice, is that the Cylons cannot set aside their directive without ceasing to exist as anything coherent at all. Their purpose and their identity are the same thing. A machine intelligence built around a standing order cannot choose to put that order down any more than a bridge can choose not to bear weight. They were made to be this. The dead civilization that made them made sure of it. They were handed a wound they didn't earn, and they have been carrying it for 1,000 years.
What time is the baby's estimated time of arrival?
Beat 4, when they were proven right.
Worked fine when it came to eating. We had fashioned a crude hand-turned generator to furnish our power.
The 1978 series was canceled after one season. The Museum of Broadcast Communications entry on Battlestar Galactica documents it. Production costs, reported at the time as among the highest in television history, made continuation unsustainable. The fleet never reached Earth in the 1978 continuity. Adama's mission was unfinished. Whether the 13th colony existed, whether Earth was real, whether the faith was justified, all of it left open. Then came Galactica, 1980. It was the colonial fleet arriving at Earth. They found it. Adama was right. The 13th colony was real. The planet was inhabited. And the destination that anchored the entire 1978 series turned out to exist. and the Cylons followed them there. An armed, battle-hardened military fleet, 24 episodes of continuous combat experience, every engagement with the Cylons a training exercise the crew didn't choose but couldn't survive without, arrives at a planet that is technologically incapable of defending itself. A world with no Vipers, no Battlestars, no capacity to resist what is now bearing down on it because the fleet that spent more than a decade being pursued finally had somewhere to land. The Cylons predicted this. Not in those words, but their stated position was always that humanity represented a permanent, proliferating, existential threat. That wherever humanity went, conflict followed. That the only resolution was the one they had been working toward for 1,000 years. They weren't wrong. The fleet found Earth. The Cylons followed. An undefended civilization now sits in the path of a war it didn't start, didn't know was coming, and has no means to stop, because a man named Adama believed in a myth, and the myth was true, and the truth turned out to be a catastrophe the Cylons had been predicting since before any living human had been born. The specific instrument the Cylons used, the deceptive armistice documented in the pilot, is the mechanism that allowed the fleet to survive. A military force caught in transit during a peace process is not a military force at battle stations. The window they intended to close forever was the window Adama flew through. Their own operational sophistication is the documented cause of their strategic failure. The mechanism they built to end the war made the war permanent. And then it delivered the war to Earth.
Command. By your command, I found
Beat 5. The Verdict.
back from me. I will protect you. I will.
Here is what the record shows. The Cylons possessed complete tactical and historical knowledge of a conflict that the colonial leadership understood only partially, through mythology and a corrupted intelligence channel. Their objective, the elimination of a civilization they had documented as permanently dangerous, wasn't arbitrary. It was the last directive of a species that lost the same war, transmitted forward through a millennium of institutional memory that no human civilization had the architecture to maintain. It's in the opening narration of Saga of a Star World. It's in the structure of the armistice. It's in the figure of Baltar, still alive, still maneuvering, still confirming the Cylons' threat assessment in episode after episode. The living proof of their argument, walking around inside the fleet, the audience spent 24 episodes defending. And the sequel closes the case. The fleet reached Earth. The Cylons followed. Everything the Cylons feared about humanity's capacity to carry conflict to new populations came true at the exact moment the heroes achieved their goal. The Museum of Broadcast Communications entry documents Glenn A. Larson's theological framework, humanity as a chosen people moving toward a promised home. In that framework, the Cylons are the adversarial force in a cosmic drama. They were never written to be understood. They were written to be overcome. The show told you they were wrong because the show needed them to be wrong. The record is more complicated than that. A directive issued by a dead civilization, executed by machines with no standing to set it aside, prosecuted with a tactical intelligence that inadvertently preserved the enemy, delivered that enemy to an undefended world, and made the war permanent. The pursuit built the army it was meant to eliminate. The tribunal is open. The Cylons were executing the will of a civilization that died in the same war, but the method they chose to end that war is the documented reason the war persisted, reached Earth, and became someone else's catastrophe entirely. Did their precision create the very outcome their precision was designed to prevent? And if it did, does that make them tragic? Or does it make them exactly what they always said humanity was? They called the Cylons the villains. The question the documented record keeps pulling back to the surface is whether a machine executing a dead civilization's final order can be called anything at all, and whether the war it carried forward for 1,000 years was ever really its war to end. The next case is already on the docket.